Every beginner stepping foot in the gym for the first time will ask this question: how many reps should I do? And it's really crucial to use the right number of reps, whether your goal is to improve your muscle mass or your strength. In my opinion, there are actually a couple of rep ranges that are really interesting if you want to get stronger. Whether you want to bench 315 or you want to squat a lot of weight or deadlift 500 pounds, the rep ranges you'll use will be key in order to achieve these goals. There's actually a really good method that I used over the years in order to improve how much weight I could lift, adding more than 100 pounds to whether my squat, my bench, or my deadlift. And this method to gain strength actually uses the rep ranges. So first, we'll talk about these exact rep ranges that you should be using in order to get stronger, and then I'll give you a sample program you can start using now in order to get stronger and lift more weight in the gym. In order to understand why the rep ranges are actually important, we first need to quickly talk about one key principle, which is called specificity. To quickly summarize what specificity means, it's simply how close is the training you're currently doing to the task you want to improve. For example, if you're a basketball player, playing the flute won't probably get you anywhere close to your goal, being a stronger or better basketball player. On the contrary, improving your cardio with running or improving how well you can manage the ball with shooting or how much muscle mass you have in order to have physical contacts against your opponent, all of those aspects will probably get you much closer to your goal, being a better basketball player. And the same applies to lifting heavy weights. If you want to become stronger at lifting heavy weights, you need to lift heavy weights. So that's exactly why we want to use rep ranges that will get us closer to our goal. And again, the goal is to lift more weight in the gym. So right now, I'm going to review those rep ranges, explain why they're so good in order to lift heavier weights, and I'll give you a sample program that you can start using right now. Let's start with the sets of 5. To be honest, this is a staple in every powerlifting program. Doing sets of 5 is extremely useful. First, it allows you to accumulate volume, and volume is key for multiple reasons. Number one, volume is one of the main drivers for muscle hypertrophy, so gaining more muscle mass. And that's key because if you have more muscle mass, you can lift more weight. If you try to accumulate volume using sets of 1 rep or 2 reps or even 3 reps, it will take much longer than it would with sets of 5 reps. So if your goal is to accumulate volume, and again, it's very important in order to have more muscle mass and lift more weight, then accumulating volume with sets of 5 will be much easier than it would with sets of 1 or 2 reps. For example, if you want to accumulate 20 reps of volume, in order to do that with sets of 5, you need to do 4 sets, which is very manageable. But if you want to accumulate 20 reps with sets of 2, you'll have to do 10 sets, which is much more complicated. And even if you can do it, it will take a lot of time, and probably it will take too many physical resources, and you won't be properly recovered the next time you go to the gym. The other benefit of doing sets of 5 is you are accumulating more reps, and your technical efficiency at lifting the weights you're lifting becomes much better. For example, if you're trying to improve your technique on the bench, let's say you want to learn how to better engage your chest, or you want to improve your leg drive, if you do it on a very low volume rep range, it will be harder because you'll need more reps in order to get used to this new technique. And also, if you're doing less reps, you're usually using more weight, and when you're trying to change your technique, if you're doing it with really heavy weights, you won't be able to change it, because oftentimes, especially when you're lifting very heavy weights, your body goes in automatic mode, so you're not really able to properly see or feel what you're doing. You're just trying to lift the weight. On the contrary, if you lift lighter loads with more reps, you can then put in place a different technique, and you can practice this technique over and over up until the point it becomes automatic to you, and then you can lift more weights without even thinking about it. To summarize the main 2 reasons as to why sets of 5s are key: more volume, more muscle growth, and also better technique and better ability to improve your technique over time on the lifts. And improving your technique and improving your muscle mass is key to lift more weights. Now, is it really enough to do sets of 5? And the reason is no. I talked to you about the specificity principle, and although doing sets of 5 on bench, for instance, is quite specific to improving your 1RM, it's not as specific as you can be, which is why we need to use the other rep ranges I'm going to talk about right now. Let's talk about the singles or the sets of 1 repetition. This is the most specific training you can do with regards to improving your 1RM. Single work is quite different from volume work. When you're practicing singles, you're usually using heavier weights. And when you use very close to your max weights, the central nervous system, or CNS, plays a key role. So in order to become better at this task, lifting more weight, you need to train not only the muscle aspect, but also the CNS aspect. And for that, the best way to do it is to practice heavy singles with increasingly more challenging weights over the course of multiple weeks. For example, if your bench max is 225 pounds or 102 kilos, maybe you start week 1 with 185 pounds or 87 kilos as your single, and then slowly over the weeks you add more and more weight. The good thing with this method is you do confront your CNS and you do allow it to get better and more efficient at handling those really heavy weights while keeping some room to grow, because like I told you, you don't want to start week 1 bonkers 100% of your max. You want to start maybe 92% of your max and slowly increase that up until you reach 100% and you're able to beat your previous PR. There's another key element I just talked. When you want to change, when you want to improve your technique, using lighter weights and doing more reps is important. But in order to try to see how efficient you are at lifting heavy weights, you can just do light loads. If you do so, whenever you load really heavy weight on the bar, your body won't be able to properly handle it, not only with your CNS, but also in terms of technical efficiency. Doing a set of 5 reps with 70% of your max and doing a set of 1 rep with 95% of your max is in reality a pretty different task. So practicing the singles with heavier weights will allow you to see if you're really good in terms of technique on those weights, and if not, you'll be able to spot the weaknesses of your technique. Try to see, okay, maybe I'm not properly engaging my chest, or maybe I lost tension in my legs on the bench press, for example. Then you put in place a fix for that with the more volume sets, lighter loads. You can improve that, and then you can recheck on the heavy weights and see how you do now. So like we've just seen, the single work is really important. On the contrary to the sets of 5, you can really improve your central nervous system, which is key in order to lift more weight. And then you can also see if your technique holds on to those heavier weights, because if your technique doesn't hold on to those heavier weights, chances are you won't be able to properly express your true strength on a max rep attempt. As you can see, when I'm doing really heavy sets, my technique has to be on point, it has to be dialed in, otherwise there's no chance I'm able to lift those weights. We're not over yet, because we still have to see 1 rep range that is really key and that's really good in order to get you stronger, and it's actually the middle ground between the sets of 5 and the sets of 1. It's the sets of 3. Like I just said, the triples is really the sweet spot, because it's much easier to accumulate volume with the triples, which is again the main weakness of the single work, because you can't accumulate volume doing sets of 1 rep. You'd have to do 20-30 sets of 1 rep with heavy loads, just not sustainable. But then with the sets of 5, okay, it's easier to accumulate volume, but you're usually using lighter loads, which don't allow for the same CNS adaptation and, like I said, technical efficiency. So the reps of 3, the triples, are really this sweet spot in between that are very good for the CNS technique adaptation while allowing you to accumulate volume and also growth, whether it's on your muscle mass, but on the skills that you need in order to perform, whether it's your squat, your bench, or your deadlift. So now you might be asking, okay, how do I use all of those rep ranges? Don't worry, I'll talk about it right now with a sample program I'll give you. But first, let me pause this video very briefly. I'm going to give you a sample program, but if you need a better programming that's really tailored to you and your numbers, that will tell you exactly what to do, how many reps, how many sets with what weight, I have more than 15 powerlifting programs available on my training app. There's no engagement, you can follow any of the program at any time, and you can cancel your subscription also at any time. So if you want to follow a program for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you can do that and then cancel your subscription. So if you want to learn more about that, you can click the link in the description or go to thepanache.app. Now back to the video. almost every powerlifting program will use a principle called periodization. The idea is that you want to train different qualities or different skills at different moments. And that's actually a very good and very interesting way to use all of the rep ranges I've just talked about. So there will be one session where we'll do the sets of 5, another session where we'll do the triples, and then finally a last session where we'll do the singles. So for the example, let's say you're doing a bench press program with 3 training sessions every week. Session 1 will be dedicated to accumulating volume. Like I said, more muscle mass, but also you'll become better, more efficient at the skill of doing the bench press, which is key to lift more weights. And that's why we're going to use the sets of 5. You can accumulate much more volume without also taxing too much your recovery abilities. You can do between 3 and 5 sets, depending on how advanced you are. 3 sets if you're a beginner, 4 to 5 sets if you're a more advanced lifter. In terms of weight, I suggest you use weights around 75% of your 1 rep max. So now we've done that, we can go on to session 2, which will be a bit heavier than session 1. Remember, by using a bit more weight every time, you can use the progressive overload principle. That's exactly why we're using the triples now, because when you're doing less reps, you can use a bit more weight, which is again important for your CNS adaptations and also making sure your technique holds up to those heavier weights. Because your session 2, you're still recovering from the volume from session 1, and you still have to be somewhat ready and prepared for session 3, where we'll have the single work. You don't want to go crazy bonkers on this session, which is why I usually recommend you do between 2 and 4 sets or 3 reps with approximately 85% of your 1 rep max. A very good pattern that I like is doing a 3x3 with 85%. I think it's really a staple for almost everybody in order to get stronger. Finally, we're on to session 3, which is the most specific training session we'll do for our bench press. And using the singles is one of the best ways, if not the best way, to achieve this goal. Remember, in order to stay specific, we want to confront ourselves to heavy weights that will slowly increase over the course of several weeks, and usually a strength cycle or powerlifting program will last from 4 to 6 weeks. So make sure you're using weights that will allow you to stay consistent and slowly increase over the course of multiple weeks. For example, you can start with 90% of your 1 rep max for a number of singles, maybe 3-4 singles, and then as you add more weight, you lower the number of singles you're doing up until the point you're pretty much able to try to break your previous PR. And by using this sample program I just gave you, you'll be able to train almost every quality that's required to lift heavier weights, in our example to improve your bench press, such as the progressive overload, volume, the CNS work, the technique work, while managing your recovery abilities, which is key in order to get stronger. And that was it for today's video, guys. I hope it was helpful. I hope you learned a couple of things. If that's the case, one of the best ways to let me know, leave a like, subscribe to the channel, leave a comment, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.